I retired from the United States Air Force in 1994 as the rank of Chief Master Sergeant. I was assigned to the Air Force Office of Special Investigations as a special agent from May of 1969 to November of 1994. And you're probably asking yourself, what is OSI? OSI is the federal law enforcement and counterintelligence agency for the United States Air Force and the U.S. Space Force. My career as an OSI agent, I conducted background investigations on military and DoD civilians requiring security clearances. I also done criminal counterintelligence and fraud investigations. I conducted technical security countermeasure surveys in sensitive military and DoD contractor facilities to detect and neutralize electronic surveillance threats. I conducted electronic surveillances to include covert video, photographic, eavesdrop, wiretap techniques in support of criminal fraud and counterintelligence investigations. I was chief of the Protective Service Operations Team for the 17th Air Force Commander and his travels throughout Europe. My last duty assignment before retiring in November of 1994, my swan song was OSI Command Rep to Army Air Force Exchange Service, Dallas, Texas. And if I can get this thing to work again, there we go. Today I'm going to talk about the Cold War, Berlin, the divided city, and also an Air Force deserter assigned to West Berlin turned spy. My duty stations in Germany, from October of '82 to October of '86, I was assigned to OSI Det 7032, Sindelberg Air Base, West Germany. I was chief of the Protective Service Operations Team for the 17th Air Force Commander. On October of '86 to October of '91, I was assigned to OSI District 70, Lindsay Air Station, Wiesbaden, West Germany, chief of the Technical Services Division. I conducted audio countermeasures and electronic surveillances. I traveled to West and East Berlin on official business and pleasure trips. A sobering reminder of World War II. The Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church was badly damaged during the bombing raid in 1943 and was not rebuilt. A new church was built next to it in 1963. Berlin, the divided city. After World War II, Berlin was divided into 4 sectors: British, French, American, and Soviet sectors. The Berlin Airlift. On 24 June 1948, Soviet forces blocked all road, rail, and water routes into Berlin's Allied-controlled areas. The Soviets couldn't block Allied airspace, so U.S. and British forces flew supplies to the Allied sectors. C-47 and C-54 aircraft flew supplies to Tempelhof Central Airport, West Berlin, transporting over 2.3 million tons of supplies into West Berlin on more than 270,000 flights over 11 months. On 12 May 1949, the Soviets lifted the blockade of West Berlin due to economic issues in East Berlin. I took these photographs in 1986 of the Tempelhof Central Airport, the main building on the left. Some of the walls in that building were over 3 feet thick. On the right are the runways that were used during the Berlin airlift and were still active when I left Germany in 1991. Memorials, the C-54 Skymaster, that is in Tempelhof, and the C-47 Berlin train, that memorial is at Rhein-Main Air Base, Frankfurt, West Germany. And the actual memorials themselves at Tempelhof and at Rhein-Main. Traveling to West Berlin by duty train from West Germany. In December of '82, I traveled on the duty train to Berlin with the 17th Air Force Commander and Ohio Wing Commanders for a conference at Tempelhof Central Airport. The U.S. Army provided a special VIP train for his coach and his party. This was the only time the 17th Air Force Commander traveled by train to West Berlin. All other trips, the 17th Air Force Commander would fly from Ramstein Air Base, West Germany, to Tempelhof Central Airport via military aircraft. We would drive the hard car, the Army Mercedes, to West Berlin and have it waiting at Tempelhof for his arrival. Duty train routes. This was an experience. The U.S. Army duty train would depart Frankfurt, West Germany at night. Upon arrival at the east-west German border, engines were switched and an East German engine was hooked up. East German and Soviet authorities were not allowed to board any part of the train. The U.S. commander and interpreter had to exit the train at each checkpoint so that the orders and other papers could be inspected. The train moved slowly on its 110-mile journey. On the single track used by many trains, the trip took about 6 hours to complete, with frequent stops on sidings. The track used by the duty train needed repair as the trip was quite bumpy. Observation towers with floodlights and armed guards dotted the route. Cameras and alcohol were prohibited on board the train, and the curtains had to be closed at all times. The trains left at night and arrived the next morning. The night travel was in both directions between West Berlin and West Germany. You had to have flag orders to travel by train or by vehicle to West Berlin. And these flag orders were prepared for official travel. As I was traveling with the general to Berlin, my rank was civilian and I traveled on a red passport. The flag orders are in US and English, Russian, and French. Traveling to West Berlin by auto from West Germany. Document check at Helmstedt. The journey commenced at the MP duty room in Helmstedt, West Germany. Military personnel underwent document checks, flag orders, military ID cards, passports. Allied Checkpoint Alpha. From Helmstedt, travelers proceeded to Checkpoint Alpha, situated to the actual crossing point, which is the east-west border of Germany. The flag orders were required. Departure times and mileage readings were recorded by the military police. You could not exit off the Autobahn or stop for any reason except for an emergency. Could not exceed the posted speed limit, not like Florida. You were provided an emergency packet that contained signs requesting a Soviet that were written in Russian and German. If you were stopped by an East German, you took the sign, put it in your windshield, requesting a Soviet officer. Allied Checkpoint Bravo. The final stretch was to Checkpoint Bravo. Here travel time was calculated. Any deviation from the standard mileage readings raised questions. Once cleared, travelers were free to explore West Berlin. These are flag orders for pleasure travel to West Berlin. My rank was on the stamp. The stamps that you see at the top, the circular ones are about the Allied stamps. The rectangular stamps are the Russian stamps when I go through those checkpoints, which I will talk about very shortly here. 2 Soviet checkpoints are between the 2 Allied checkpoints. Entering the Soviet checkpoint, entry gates were closed. You provided documents to a Soviet conscript, probably an E1, 18 or 19 years old, standing outside of the building. He will salute you, you salute him. He will look at your documents and direct you to a certain building. You would provide the documents through a teller window that was painted to not allow observation of their working area. However, you could hear the documents being copied. Flag orders would then stamp with the time and date and returned. Provided documents again to the conscript. Upon his review, he would open the gate and you were allowed to pass back to the Autobahn. And now a story. I was coming back from the Berlin Marathon in 1986, and we were going through the last Soviet checkpoint. And I was just getting back into the car. My daughter at the time, she was a teenager, she says, "Daddy, why don't we like the Russians?" I said, "Well, Michelle, it's not that we don't like the Russians, it's that our 2 countries don't get along." And she turned around and looked to see if anyone was watching, and she blew the conscript a kiss. He in turn looked around and blew her a kiss back. That was a Kodak moment. And unfortunately, I couldn't take that picture because I probably would have got arrested. The first wall. On the night of 12-13 August 1981, East German soldiers laid down more than 30 miles of barbed wire barrier through the heart of Berlin. East Berlin citizens were forbidden to pass into West Berlin. On 15 August, they began replacing barbed wire with concrete. The concrete wall. During the rest of 1961, the wall continued to grow, consisting of a series of concrete walls up to 15 feet high. By the 1980s, this system of walls and electrified fences extended 28 miles through Berlin and 75 miles around West Berlin, separating it from the rest of East Germany. The Berlin Wall was made up of 2 walls instead of 1. Both walls were separated by a mine corridor called the death strip. It was heavily guarded and consisted of 302 watchtowers. Well, I disagree with that word watchtower. I call them machine gun towers because that's what they had up in those towers. As you can see, the picture on the right I took probably in 1982 and 1983, I think. It showed the wall, showed a barrier, a building in East Berlin. The windows are all barred, and if you look down a little bit further to the right, you will see, quote, one of those watchtowers. Again, the picture on the left is the same wall extended down a little bit, showing the building, the windows being barred, video camera system, and my 2 kids acting like fools who are now 40 and 50 years old. On the right is a wall going around Brandenburg Gate. The wall went on the west side of the gate, separating East and West Berlin. So East Berlin had Brandenburg Gate in their area. The death strip between the 2 walls. They said before the wall came down that they took the mines out between the 2 fences. Well, I would not want to be the first one out to venture out to find out if all those mines were taken out. On the right, again, the 2 walls, the death strip, and the East German Guard looking over the wall into West Berlin. Checkpoint Charlie. Members of the Allied forces were not allowed to use the other sector crossing points designated for use by foreigners. In other words, all Allied forces had to cross here at Checkpoint Charlie. Located in the American sector with the Soviet checkpoint in the background. And basically, this is a separation between East and West Berlin by vehicle. Soviet zone checkpoint before the fall of the wall. As you can see, no traffic, no one out there. Soviet zone checkpoint after the fall of the wall. Got looked like Morris Avenue there. Sign after Checkpoint Charlie before the Soviet checkpoint. It's in English, Russian, and French. You are leaving the American sector. And the sign before Checkpoint Charlie after the Soviet checkpoint. Again, English, Russian, and French, because that's the 3 languages that were spoken for the 4 different sectors of Berlin. I love this, the Pope's Revenge, East Berlin Tower. I was very fortunate this day to be in East Berlin, and it was sunny, because normally you don't see the sun. It's like living in the state of Washington. And on this particular day, the sun was shining on the tower, and it caused a reflection in the shape of a cross. The East German government wanted it removed, as they were an atheist country. As engineers struggled to come up with a fix, the people of Berlin began to embrace the tower's imperfection. And speaking of imperfections, this is the Trabant, called a spark plug with a roof. Trabant is a series of small cars produced from 1957 until 1991 by former East German car manufacturer. It featured a plastic resin body, even though the urban myth was that the Trabant was made of cardboard. People believe this car is one of the reasons why communism fell. It had a 2-stroke engine, no rear seat belts, no tachometer, no turn signal or headlight indicators, no fuel gauge, no headliner, no trunk liner, or trunk insulation of any kind, no glove box, and the fuses sit uncovered next to the steering wheel. There were open screws on this outside of the car, and the only interior door lock was on the passenger side. Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, East Berlin. They copied off of JFK's internal flame with their tomb. In 1969, the mortal remains of an unknown soldier and nameless concentration camp victim were interred, surrounded by soil from the Second World War battlefields and concentration camps, with an eternal flame burning in the middle of the room. This is outside the building. East German Guards doing the goose step and their version of changing the guard. And when I was skinny and young, I ran the Berlin Marathon the day before this picture was taken in 1986. It's myself and Jose Martinez posing with one of the East German Guards. German-Russian Museum, East Berlin. During one of the official trips to West Berlin with the 70th Air Force commander, he desired to visit this museum. Behind the museum was a military Russian barracks. The Russian formation was present at the time we arrived in the hard car. The Russian commander called his formation to attention. General Goodall saluted as he exited the vehicle. Excuse me. Oh, I gotta go back, okay. The Russian commander saluted General Goodall as General Goodall was getting out of the vehicle. And General Goodall returned the salute. It was another Kodak moment. Shopping in East Berlin before the fall of the wall. Alexanderplatz was the center of East Berlin with many opportunities. Many stores had a variety of merchandise on display in the windows. On many occasions, the merchandise was not available to be purchased. Briefings were given before traveling to East Berlin not to purchase any food products to be brought out of East Berlin, as the locals needed these products more than us. The military uniform was required when visiting East Berlin. Brandenburg Gate photo I took from East Berlin showing the wall in the background. This is before the fall of the wall. And this is the gate after the fall of the wall, taken from the West Berlin side. As you see, the chariot was removed from the top of the gate for repairs. The fall of the wall. 4 November 1989, some 500,000 people gathered in East Berlin's central Alexanderplatz for the country's biggest pro-democracy protest. On 9 November 1989, East Germany opens its heavily fortified border after 28 years. Over the subsequent weeks and months, people, including me, chipped away at that barrier. On 3 October 1990, the reunification of East and West Germany was made official almost 1 year after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Again, all the graffiti's being chipped off. On the left, and it's a picture of me on the right. This is after the fall of the wall, with a hole in the wall, and 3 East German guards looking into West Berlin. The flags of the occupied city of Berlin. The French, the American, the Soviet, and English. And a person on the right chipping away to get his souvenir. I took this picture showing a hole in the wall, the strip, the mines, quote, the watchtower, and behind the watchtower you can see the other wall. On the right, this is interesting. Even though the wall came down on 9 November 1989, the East Berliners, when they went across into West Berlin, when they came back into East Berlin, they had to have the documents checked by East Germans. And this probably caused a big war. I think World War III probably started after the fall of the wall. And it was between East Berlin and West Berlin. And the reason for it, at the time of the exchange rate was the East German Deutschmark was 10-1 against the West German Deutschmark. Well, when the wall came down, the West German government says, well, they could do the exchange rate 1-1. Of course, all the East Berliners are charging in the east to West Berlin, and they're buying everything off the shelves. So West Berlin started looking like the shelves in East Berlin. Entrepreneurs, after the fall of the wall, everyone likes to make $1. And I was a customer. After the wall came down, people were selling military uniforms, stacked outs, anything they could get their hands on to make $1. And I bought a Russian hat and an East German hat. The East Side Gallery, in the spring of 1990, after the opening of the Berlin Wall, this section was painted by 118 artists from 21 countries. The paintings on the side of the wall were formerly on the side facing East Berlin. What's interesting, this was 1990 I took these photos, and 20 years later they had to redo the wall because of deterioration from the environment and people doing graffiti. Again, we have an East Berliner chiseling his way through the wall, and on the right we have a Trabant crashing through the wall. But all these different paintings on the wall by artists. Jeffrey Carney, an Air Force deserter turned spy. In 1982, Staff Sergeant Jeffrey Carney was assigned to 6912 Electronic Security Group at Marienfelde Field Site, West Berlin, as an intelligence specialist and German linguist. His criticism of the U.S. government sealed his decision to defect to East Germany. An East German border guard stopped him to speak with an agent from the East German Intelligence Service, EGIS, who convinced him to return to his job and feed classified information to EGIS. In 1984, he was transferred to Goodfellow Air Force Base, Texas, where he decided to desert. Since he had a top secret SCI clearance, OSI opened a desertion case to determine his whereabouts. His desertion case was closed until the fall of the Berlin Wall. In March of 1990, the Berlin OSI detachment received information about the activities of the suspected defector. OSI worked with the CIA, FBI, National Security Agency, and the U.S. Army to identify Carney. By November, the Department of Justice decided to let OSI carry out the arrest instead of the FBI. In order to conduct the interview, the Air Force had to return the former serviceman and defector to active duty and then issue warrants for his arrest. OSI decided to go ahead with the arrest in April of 1991, despite receiving no indication he still lived at his last known address in East Berlin. A surveillance was conducted of his apartment. He was photographed on his balcony and arrested the next day. Agents then learned he had divulged approximately 150 classified programs, some of which were extremely sensitive to NSA efforts. Carney pled guilty to the charges of espionage, conspiracy, desertion, in exchange for a 25-year sentence. Unfortunately, this man only served 11 years. He should have been in jail for the rest of his life for what he did to our country. After his release from prison, he continued to live in the United States. They even issued him an East German passport, and that's dated August 9, 1989. For his services to East Germany, he was awarded the NVA Service Medal in bronze and the Medal of Brotherhood in Arm in gold. The medals were seized during the search of his apartment. He was secretly flown to the United States aboard a C-141 from Tempelhof the following day after his arrest. Carney's arrest and return to the United States was coordinated at the highest levels of the United States government without consulting German officials. During the search of his apartment, he still had his Air Force military ID card. After the fall of the wall, he was no longer an asset to the East German Intelligence Service. At that time, they gave him a job as an U-Bahn driver. He was driving the subway. I made this plaque with a piece of the wall that I chipped out. I bought the map and bought a description from a store in West Berlin. The reunification of East and West Germany occurred on 3 October 1990. This concludes my presentation.